What would you do if a beloved pastor suddenly collapsed in front of his entire congregation, only for his wife to reveal a bombshell moments later that left everyone speechless? That's exactly what happened with gospel artist and pastor Dietrick Haddon, and the shocking turn of events has the church world buzzing like never before. This isn't just about a medical scare. It's about hidden truths, unexpected revelations, and questions that could change the way people see one of gospel's most talked about figures. Stay with me, because the details of what unfolded inside that sanctuary are unlike anything you've ever heard. Family, what went down inside that church has people talking everywhere, from gospel music fans to everyday believers who can't believe the shocking turn of events. Dietrick Haddon, a man known for his powerful voice, bold sermons, and controversial presence in the gospel industry, experienced something that no one saw coming. One moment, he was leading worship, lifting the congregation in praise, and the next, he collapsed right there in the middle of service. Gasps filled the sanctuary, people rushed to his aid, and an eerie silence swept through the building as everyone feared the worst. But here's where the story takes a turn that no one was prepared for. While church members prayed and tried to figure out what was happening, Dietrick's wife stepped forward, not just to calm the congregation, but to share a truth that instantly sent shockwaves through the entire community. Her revelation wasn't something small, and it wasn't something people expected her to say in that moment. It was bold, it was emotional, and it completely changed the conversation about what was happening to Dietrick Haddon. In this video, we're going to break down exactly what happened that day, what led up to the collapse, what his wife revealed that has everyone stunned, and why this moment might be one of the biggest turning points in Dietrick's life and ministry. And let me just say, by the end of this video, you will have a very different perspective on both the man and the message he's been delivering for years. So grab your seat, because we're about to dive deep into a story filled with faith, family struggles, health scares, and revelations that nobody thought would ever come to light. And trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail of this. To understand why this moment shook so many people, we have to first look at who Dietrick Haddon is, what he represents, and why his name carries so much weight in both the gospel music industry and the pulpit. Dietrick Haddon isn't just another gospel singer, he's one of the most recognizable voices of his generation. From the time he burst onto the scene in the late 1990s and early 2000s, he was labeled as the new sound of gospel, a man who wasn't afraid to push boundaries musically while still preaching the word. He's won awards, topped gospel charts, and inspired millions with songs that mix traditional church roots with a fresh, contemporary edge. People loved him because he wasn't afraid to be different. But Dietrick isn't only known for his music. He's also a pastor, a leader, and a man who has never shied away from controversy. Over the years, he's been in the headlines not only for his talent, but also for his bold opinions, his sometimes unconventional choices, and even his very public personal life. In fact, his name has been associated with everything from reality TV drama to church debates about how far gospel artists should go in balancing faith with modern culture. Whether you love him or you question him, one thing is for sure, Dietrick Haddon has always kept people talking. That's why his sudden collapse inside a church wasn't just a medical scare. It was a moment that made people stop in their tracks. For someone like him, whose life has always been public, dramatic, and larger than life, this collapse wasn't simply about health. It became a symbol of something deeper. Congregants weren't just worried about his body. They were worried about what this meant for his ministry, his family, and the message he's been preaching all these years. Think about it. When a beloved pastor collapses in front of his flock, it shakes the very foundation of trust and faith. Some wondered, was this a physical issue, or was there a deeper spiritual battle happening right before their eyes? And when you had the shocking words from his wife right after the collapse, it transformed a frightening moment into one of the most unforgettable episodes in gospel church history. And here's the thing, this wasn't just about one Sunday morning. This collapse and revelation may be tied to years of pressure, years of hidden struggles, and years of carrying the weight of expectations on his shoulders. But before we get to the wife's bombshell, let's unpack the buildup. Because when you understand what led up to this moment, you'll see it was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday service, the kind of service where voices rise in unison, people clap their hands in rhythm, and hearts open in worship. Dietrick Haddon had been on fire that morning. Witnesses say he was full of energy, leading the congregation with passion, sweat pouring down his face as he encouraged the church to give their all in praise. It was one of those services where you could feel the electricity in the air, the kind of atmosphere that makes people say, "God is really moving in this place." But then, in an instant, the atmosphere shifted. As Dietrick finished a powerful note and raised his hands to the heavens, his body seemed to weaken. He staggered slightly, as if losing balance, before collapsing to the floor in front of hundreds of stunned churchgoers. The music came to a sudden halt, screams and gasps filled the sanctuary, and people rushed from their seats to see what had just happened. Imagine the shock in that room. One moment, their pastor and gospel leader was full of life and power, and the next, he was lying motionless on the ground. Some members immediately began to pray out loud, calling on God to protect and heal him. Others tried to administer aid, fanning him, checking his pulse, and making sure someone called for medical help. The choir stood frozen, tears streaming down some of their faces, while ushers tried to maintain order as panic threatened to spread across the congregation. And here's where it gets even more intense. Reports from people in attendance say there was an eerie silence that swept over the church once they realized this wasn't just a stumble or a faint spell. This was serious. Some even believed they were witnessing a spiritual attack, that the enemy was trying to take out a man who had been preaching the gospel and influencing so many lives. But then, just as everyone's fear was at its peak, Dietrick's wife stepped forward. With calm but firm authority, she addressed the congregation. Instead of simply reassuring them that everything was okay, she dropped a statement that made the air in that sanctuary feel even heavier. She revealed that Dietrick had been struggling with something behind the scenes, something the church had no idea about. She hinted that the collapse was not just a medical episode, but the result of months, maybe even years, of hidden struggles that had finally caught up with him. Her words stunned everyone because they weren't what you expect to hear in that kind of moment. Instead of shielding him with silence or vague statements, she was brutally honest. And her honesty instantly changed the way people saw what had just unfolded. But what exactly did she say? What revelation did she give that has people still talking about this moment to this very day? That's where things get even more shocking, because her bombshell uncovered truths that many had suspected, but few were willing to say out loud. When Dietrick Haddon's wife finally stepped forward that Sunday morning, the room grew silent. People expected her to tell them that everything was fine, that her husband had just been overworked or dehydrated, and that he would be okay after a few moments of rest. But instead, she spoke words that no one in the sanctuary was ready to hear. She started with a trembling voice, but her tone quickly became firm, almost as if she had been carrying this weight for far too long. She told the congregation that what they had just witnessed wasn't random, nor was it an isolated incident. According to her, Dietrick had been pushing his body and spirit to the breaking point for years. Behind the smiles, the preaching, and the powerful performances, he was exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. She revealed that Dietrick had been ignoring warnings from doctors and loved ones to slow down, to take care of his health, to rest when his body was clearly signaling that it couldn't keep up with his relentless schedule. But like so many leaders in ministry, he felt the pressure to keep going, to keep pouring into others, even when he himself was running empty. And then came the bombshell. She explained that the collapse was not just about physical exhaustion. It was tied to deeper struggles he had been silently carrying. She hinted at battles with stress, the heavy expectations of the church community, and the immense pressure that comes with being both a gospel superstar and a spiritual leader. People in the room were visibly shaken. Some began to weep openly, while others bowed their heads, realizing just how much they had overlooked the humanity of their pastor. For so long, many had placed him on a pedestal, expecting him to always be strong, always be available, always be perfect. But in that moment, his wife reminded them, and maybe even him, that he was human too. In a move that left everyone speechless, she admitted that their family had been struggling privately as well. She spoke about the strain that long hours, constant travel, and public expectations had put on their household. And while she didn't go into every detail, it was clear that this collapse was not just the result of a health scare. It was the breaking point of years of hidden burdens. Imagine sitting in that church and hearing those words. For years, you've watched Dietrick on stage, leading with fire and passion, encouraging others to hold on to their faith, all while silently battling storms of his own. The wife's words pulled back the curtain and revealed the truth. The man they admired was hurting. And this collapse was his body's way of forcing him to stop and pay attention. But here's where things take another shocking turn. After laying bare these truths, she looked directly at the congregation and said something that left chills running down people's spines. She told them, "This isn't just about Dietrick. This is about all of us. This is a warning." Her statement raised more questions than it answered. What exactly did she mean by a warning? Was she talking about the church, the music industry, or something even bigger? People left that service not just worried about their pastor's health, but also questioning what deeper issues she might have been pointing to. And here's where the story gets even more complicated, because her bombshell didn't just stop with the congregation. It spread quickly outside the church walls. By that evening, her words were being whispered across gospel circles, shared on social media, and debated in church communities around the country. But what were the reactions? How did fans, church members, and even critics respond to this sudden and unexpected revelation? That's what we need to explore next, because the fallout from her statement created waves far beyond the four walls of that sanctuary. The very same day that Dietrick Haddon collapsed and his wife dropped her shocking bombshell, word began to spread like wildfire. At first, it was just whispers among churchgoers, text messages, phone calls, and hushed conversations between believers who were still in shock over what they had just witnessed. But within hours, the story hit social media, and that's when everything exploded. Clips from the service began circulating online. Some showed the moment Dietrick fell, while others captured his wife's trembling but powerful speech. By the evening, hashtags related to the incident were trending on platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thousands of fans flooded the comment sections, expressing everything from heartbreak to anger. One group of people expressed deep sympathy, sending prayers and love to the Haddon family. They praised his wife for having the courage to speak the truth and for lifting the veil on the immense pressure faced by pastors and gospel leaders. They saw the moment not just as a tragedy, but as a wake-up call for the entire church community to stop idolizing leaders and start supporting them as human beings. But then there was another group, critics who questioned why his wife chose to reveal such personal details in such a public way. Some accused her of embarrassing Dietrick by airing private struggles in front of the entire church and the world. They felt she had crossed a line, and debates broke out online about whether her actions were brave or reckless. And then came the gospel community itself. Fellow pastors, gospel singers, and ministry leaders began to weigh in. Some defended Dietrick, acknowledging that they too had faced similar pressures and struggles but had never dared to speak about them openly. Others used the moment to point fingers at the culture of celebrity pastors, arguing that the collapse and the wife's revelations were symptoms of a larger problem in modern church culture: too much focus on performance, too little focus on balance and health. Perhaps the most powerful responses came from younger believers and those outside the church, who admitted that this situation gave them a different perspective. They saw vulnerability, humanity, and authenticity in a space that often only shows perfection. For many, it made the gospel message feel more relatable, as they saw that even those who lead others can break down and need help. But with all this support and criticism swirling, the question remained: what happens next for Dietrick and his family? Would he step away from ministry for a while? Would his health improve? And would the bombshell his wife dropped create lasting change in how the gospel world approaches its leaders, or would it be swept under the rug once that dominated not only social media, but also gospel circles, church board meetings, and private conversations across the country? And in a way, the reaction itself proved just how impactful the moment had been. Because whether people agreed or disagreed with how it unfolded, no one could deny that the incident forced an uncomfortable but necessary conversation into the light. Conclusion: why this story matters. When you put it all together, the shocking collapse, the raw honesty of his wife's revelation, and the firestorm of public reaction, what we have is more than just a dramatic church moment. It's a mirror held up to the entire gospel community. Dietrick Haddon's collapse is a reminder that even the strongest, most gifted leaders are still human, still vulnerable, and still in need of care. His wife's bombshell pulled back the curtain on the hidden pressures that so many face but are too afraid to admit. And the public reaction revealed just how divided people are about the balance between transparency and privacy in ministry. But perhaps the biggest lesson here is this: moments like these force us to rethink the way we view leaders. They are not superheroes. They are people with struggles, families, and limits. And when we ignore those realities, the consequences can be devastating. So as this story continues to develop, the real question is not just about what happens to Dietrick. It's about what happens to all of us. Will we learn to extend grace, support, and understanding to those who pour so much into us? Or will we continue the cycle of pressure and burnout until more leaders fall? What do you think about his wife's bold decision to reveal the truth? Was it the right move, or did she go too far? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear your voice in this conversation. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who care about the future of gospel music and ministry. Because this story isn't just about one man's collapse, it's about a movement, a culture, and a truth that desperately needs to be faced.